facilitator who offers an amazing variety of life-changing classes and workshops. Work with Glenna from anywhere with teleclasses and workshops all over the globe. To learn more and see Glenna's current schedule of events, classes, and workshops, visit glennarice.com.
High-frequency healing for an amazing life with Source Light Radio. Join host Laura Barton each month on Transformation Talk Radio as she explores Source Light Integration, a unique spectrum of energy, light, and frequency. Experience instantaneous healing and amazing shifts in consciousness with Source Light Integrations Radio. For more information on Laura and her work, visit sourcelightintegrations.com.
How would you like increased health and vitality? How would you like to avoid the onset of disease as well as slow the aging process? This is all possible through a simple, safe, and natural process. Every day we are either moving toward wellness or away from wellness.
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. I'd like to be your partner in achieving optimal health. Contact me now at maryjanemack.com or call 425-392-0659. Visit maryjanemack.com.
Views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
This show's audio was via a Skype call.
Welcome to Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek. Marge was searching for the purpose of her life and the truth that would tie everything together to make sense of what was taught and what was happening on our planet, the fire that was creating all the smoke. Through many experiences, she was finally led to the knowledge book that provided all the answers. Marge is now talking about this gift to humanity on Knowledge Book Radio, so all can be united in peace, love, and harmony. This live call-in show at 1-800-930-2819 is amazing. So get ready to hear about the Knowledge Book. Here's your host, Marge Ptaszek.
Everyone, I'm Marge Ptaszek, and you're listening to the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek on Transformation Talk Radio. For the next hour, as we've been doing for the past year or so, we will continue to cover some topics from the Knowledge Book. And this week, we're going to attempt to cover these humongous topics of total will, partial will, individual will, free will, and how that plays in with our destiny, our karma, and our lives. So hopefully everyone has been well and everything is going well for you and things are proceeding smoothly. Here in New York City, it's been a bit rainy. We've had flood warnings off, mostly every day now for the past week, but thankfully everything seems to be okay. So before anything else, I would like to again remind you of our website. That is www.usa.theknowledgebook.net. And the Turkish World Brotherhood Union website is www.dkb-mevlana.org.tr. Of course, my contact information, telephone number is 973-787-7035. This is a cell phone number, and you can text me any suggestions or questions you may have. Or you can also email me at mmjpmarymaryjohnpeter99@gmail.com. So, of course, any kind of questions or suggestions for a topic are very welcome, since we like to respond to and be in tune with whatever interest you may have at this point or whatever questions you may have about the Knowledge Book. As you know, now is the time where if you'd like to have information given to you, you would need to ask a question first, okay? So, again, we'll be talking about total will, partial will, individual will, free will, as it plays out with our destiny and karma. and our everyday lives. So as usual, I like to start with the ground definitions of the words that we're dealing with, both from the knowledge book perspective and maybe from the world perspective as well. Excuse me. So total will, as defined by the knowledge book, is the will of the total. This is the will of the total of Allah, the unification of your personal consciousness code with the universal code. So you arrive at the will of the total when your personal consciousness code unites with the universal code. So this is a definition of total will from the knowledge book. Now, there is also something that's mentioned as the partial will. And the partial will is defined in the knowledge book as the smallest fragment of the will of the whole that is present in the human. And this turns out to be kind of like our magnetite, our GPS, that drives us forward to completing our task of going back to the origin, back home from where we started. So this is like this irresistible urge and push forward to get us back to where we came from. Now, there's no such thing as a partial will as far as the world definition is concerned. So the knowledge book also defines the individual will. The individual will, as per the knowledge book, is defined as freedom of thought, a propensity towards mischief, meaning propensity towards going against the guidelines, going against the guidelines set. And because we have this propensity, this urge towards doing what we're not supposed to be doing, that has resulted in our having to go through the moral training in the religious medium. And this is what we consider as our personal decision power. Now, when we're talking about will, as far as the world definition is concerned, this is a mental power manifested as wishing, choosing, desiring, or intending. Another definition is a disposition to act according to principles or ends. It is also the collective desire of a group, like the will of the people. It is also defined as a power of control over one's own actions or emotions. An example of this is a man of iron will. And then there's something that's called something desired, especially a choice or determination of one having authority to or power. In other words, this is a will of the monarch, will of the state, that kind of a will. So we have both the world definition and knowledge book revelation definition. We're also going to be talking about karma. So we will define karma as defined by the knowledge book. And in the knowledge book, karma is defined as a system of living that prepares the evolutionary stage. It has its own ordinance, meaning guidelines and laws, that has its own order. And that is how it is implemented or executed in our lives. And we, through this law of karma, we subconsciously repeat those actions from which we have not learned deterrent lessons from. It's an instinctive impulse and a chain of cause and effect that completes our evolution. Sometimes we learn these lessons from the first time we experience something, and sometimes it takes repetitions over many lifetimes before we learn the lesson. Now, these learned lessons are then stamped on our cell tapes, on our cells, and I'm assuming here that these cells they're talking about our brain cells, because those brain cells, our brain cells, are the ones that hold the archives of our past lives and our past histories. So our karma lessons, our karmic lessons are imprinted on our brain cells, and those brain cells are kept and stored. And we need to be very careful not to do anything that basically destroys our brain cells, like alcohol, too much alcohol, or maybe drug use, because those brain cells contain our learned lessons. And if we kill the brain cells, we basically are erasing our lessons that we learned, which means we have to go through those lessons again to relearn those lessons again. So it is imperative for us to be able to maintain our brain cells and maintain our past history and lessons learned through karma. Now we come to this world to be able to experience everything on its positive and negative sides. This is also part of what it is that karma entails, okay? So, and there's also destiny. Destiny is basically what we know as fate. This is something that seems to be predetermined, pre-planned, and it basically guides and orchestrates our life. One may ask, if I have a free will and we were given free will, which means no one has the right to interfere with our freedom of choice, with our decision-making process, why are things happening to me that I don't want to be happening to me? Why am I hitting with the same kind of problem over and over again? And if we're given a free will, how does this work? So we hear here, and we also feel the fact that we have a fate, we have a destiny, we have a predestination. And even when we basically review our lives up until the time that we are living now, we can kind of maybe see a discernible pattern. We may notice maybe we're going from here to here as if we're going through a progression. And it's sometimes, at least to me, it feels like we're a pinball in a pinball machine. And we're constantly being propelled and directed by paddles that shoot us back into experiences when we almost get to leave. In other words, the pinball leaves through that exit hole at the bottom. So what is this destiny, and how do we control it, and what do we do with it? Well, according to the knowledge book, destiny is our plan, our roadmap, our choice of body, family, environment, life occurrences that allow us to evolve spiritually and mature our energies. Now, our ultimate goal is to be able to free ourselves of ego and to be, there's an interruption here, to be free of ego and to be in complete selflessness and altruism, and be once again, as a totality of both spiritual level and crude matter energy level, the spark of God we once were. So what decides what kind of life we're going to have? And this depends basically on whether we have managed to unify our 7 facets or our 7 awareness nuclei. If you remember in fascicle 9 of the knowledge book, it mentions the 7 facets in fascicle 9. And that each facet is a nucleus of awareness, and it's a portion of the infinite awareness. So if you have infinite awareness and you divide it into 2, half of it is infinite awareness and the other half is subdivided into 7 pie pieces, 7 sections, and each section doesn't know anything at all about the other section. So that those sections, those 7 facets are intelligence, awareness, thought, idea, logic, conscience, okay? Now, each of them we need to be able to open and unify these 7 facets with each other. And once we unify all these 7 facets with each other, then we will be able to unify also with the infinite awareness, and at which point we will be able to have all the knowledge and all the energies that are out there to be able to be given to us. Now, why are we talking about the 7 facets when we're talking about total will, partial will, and free will? Well, because we're also talking about destiny. And our destiny is actually predetermined on which part of those facets we have or have not been able to open and unify with the other ones. Because according to the knowledge book, every one of those facets takes possession and takes control of the fetus in the womb. And that facet then prepares a body, prepares the medium into which it is being born, and therefore it decides what kind of experiences and what kind of karmas and what kind of everything that you're going to be going through. So those 7 facets basically take the control of the fetus and therefore determine the destiny of your life. So when you were once upon a time a fish, the fact that you were a fish and hatched from an egg that determined what you were going to be doing in that lifetime. That determined that you're going to be in the ocean or in a stream or in a lake. You'll be living that kind of life. It determines what kind of food you'll be eating. That determines what kind of environment you'll be living, and it determines what kind of experiences you'll be going through. If you were born, let's say, in the body of an animal, then depending on the animal that you are born as, whether an armadillo or an ant or a spider or an elephant or a whale, that determines your environment, that determines your path of destiny, and that determines what kind of experiences you'll be going through. I know these are far-fetched examples, but it just shows you that what we're going through is determined by something that we need to accomplish. So when we unite all the facets, meaning we complete our evolution that's specific for each facet, we merge with it the infinite awareness and become part of the will of the total, and then are able to receive infinite knowledge. And of course, our destiny functions parallel to our evolutions, where we are in the process of going from the Stone Age to the Golden Age. So I'm going to use something as an example to show you how we are driven and kind of maybe exemplify what happens to us in our life. So we've all heard about the fact, I hope, that, or maybe this is new, that salmon, when they are born in a particular stream in fresh water, and eventually they grow in that stream and they develop to a certain level, and then they travel to either a lake or the stream or into the ocean. So there's like a particular development of these eggs that are laid when the salmon actually spawn. So the tiny fish with the yolk sac of the egg are attached to the bellies, and they stay close to the nest for a few months. And when they have consumed all of the yolk sac and grown in size, then these fish emerge from the gravel and are then considered fry. Now what happens to the fry? The fry swim to the surface of the water. They gobble up some air and fill their swim bladders with oxygen and begin to feed. And depending on the type of salmon it is, and depending on type of fry it is, it can spend up to a year or more in the natal stream, meaning where they were born or hatched. And when they emerge from the gravel, both pink and chum are already silvery smolts and head directly to the sea. The sockeye salmon tends to go into a lake, spending about 1 or 2 years there, maturing there before going into the sea. The Chinook salmon, fry, usually spend less than 5 months in fresh water, while coho fry may spend over a year in fresh water. And somehow over this time, their body gets adjusted to different salinity levels somehow, and then they gradually go into the ocean where they're able to handle the salines, the salt solution in the ocean. They are, of course, affected by the boulders, by locks on the shade, and access to side channels in allowing them to survive, and because they need to hide from predators. And this protection prevents them from getting flushed downstream during floods or river flows. Okay. Now what happens? They start migrating towards the sea. So somehow they get cues from the environment, and the fry, whenever they're ready, they start to migrate downstream towards the oceans. So this is when smolting begins and scales grow as they turn into a silvery color. And they, at night, in order to avoid predators, small fry or developing smolt allow the river to take them tail first downstream, while the larger fry swim actively towards the ocean. Now, estuaries that are at the mouth of the river are proved to be crucial for the survival of the young smolts. While they're allowing their bodies to adjust to the new conditions, meaning more salt in the water, they feed heavily And that's how they hope to survive in the actual ocean. And then eventually their ocean life begins. Some salmon remain in coastal water, meaning close to the river from which they came, and others go to different feeding grounds further away from when they were hatched. Now, in the ocean, they may spend anywhere from 1 to 7 years. And certain species have more flexible life history strategies, while others are more rigid. So depending on what species you are, you may be even a year, maybe 18 months, or maybe something in between those two, and leading up to 7 or 8 years. And eventually, when they start maturing sexually, they start to detect signals from in the water that's coming from their origin where they were hatched, meaning somehow in that ocean they detect those chemical signals that they're familiar with from birth. From hatching. Sorry, it's birth because it's, never mind. So it's from hatching. So they also, it looks like the scientists are suspecting that besides the chemical sense and cues, they're also using the sun in order to be able to go back homeward towards from where they started from. And once the salmon start reaching fresh water, they stop to eat. They do not feed anymore. And during the course of the journey, their bodies instinctively prepare for spawning. Now, this is a very taxing journey that draws energy from their fat storage, from their muscles and their organs, except for their reproductive organs. And males develop hooked noses or Skype in order to fight for dominance and be able to have mating rights with the female. So if anyone has seen pictures or films of the salmon swimming upstream, now these salmon, not only do they swim upstream, they swim up waterfalls. And those waterfalls may not be 2 or 3 feet. They may be 20 feet, 30 feet. They actually swim up the waterfalls. Their going back home is not an easy task for them. This is something on which they expend their body energy. They expend their organs. They use up their organs. They use up their muscles. They use up their fat stores. So this is something that they're driven to do, that they need to go. And even when they get there, of course, they die eventually. So they're actually going towards their death. So once they go back to the place from which they were hatched, the females start to build their nests. And these nests are basically depressions in the gravel that are made by the female when she turns sideways, and she turns on her side and uses her tail to dislodge stones or pebbles. And then, of course, the males fight with other males for spawning rights with the female. And those males that are dominant court the female. And once the spawning is done, then they both release the eggs and the milk, meaning the semen, simultaneously. The eggs settle to the gravel, and the female covers those eggs with loose gravel, and they all move upstream. And the female moves upstream to prepare another nest. And eventually, both the males and the females die, and that decomposition of the male and female fish supplies the river habitat with the nutrients that are needed for the eggs in that place, in that stream that they were hatched. Okay? So this is an incredible upstream journey that they do to lay their eggs, and it is the same place that they were hatched. Okay? Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is like a perfect example of us going back to from where we came. We are going back to God. We're going back to where we started from. Our initial spark of God is what is inside us. Our partial will is that instinctive drive, that push that drives us to do what it is that we need to do to get through our evolution, to get through our lives. Now, the entire environment that the fish go through, that the salmon goes through, basically that's their plan of destiny. When they are born as a salmon, their plan of destiny is set. The life of a salmon involves spawning, hatching of the eggs, going downstream when they are ready and they're bigger fry, and going into the ocean, then again being awoken by the scent of the original chemicals or chemical combination when they sense in the water mixed in with the ocean water of the original stream where they were hatched, and that is what drives them forward. So this is just like our plan of destiny. We are born into the environment, into the family, into the body that we specifically need for our plan of evolution for that particular lifetime. Now, the salmon that was a salmon at one point may become a different animal at another point further up on the evolution scale. And eventually we get to the point where those animals get higher and higher on the level of evolution, get bigger and bigger brains, winding up as a monkey and eventually becoming a human. And of course, those animals that are with us, like dogs, like cats, like parakeets, like whatever it is that we have in our homes, come under the influence of our energies, of our environment, and they are then able to be born and take a shortcut into becoming a human. I mean, that's my term for it. We could either go straight up the chain in the usual way, meaning step by step by step up the evolutionary ladder, physical evolution ladder, and actually spiritual evolution ladder, or when we have animals that absorb our energies and frequencies, especially if we're in conjunction with the knowledge book, that means we're able to imbue them with even bigger energies and frequencies or higher energies and frequencies, and then they are able to incorporate those energies and wind up being human much faster, okay? So if you have a cat, then the next step probably is them becoming human. So when we were first created, we were given a piece of God, and I would like to think of it this way. We were created, we were given that spark of God that was God, a part of God, a segment of God, a piece of God, a mode of God, whatever you want to call it. However, God also gave us a little gift. He gave us an outer casing for that spark, and this outer casing is crude matter. And our job in being sent to the world is to actually transform this crude matter so that it could be at the same energy, at the same frequency as our spiritual totality, as the mode of God that is actually within us. So we were given an extraordinarily long time period of 1 billion centuries. That's 100 billion years. But did we come alone? No. At every step of the game, at every step of our evolution, we were given spiritual beings, and their job was to guide us on our journey. And they were there to help us and guide us and direct us or somehow orient us to make sure that we made the correct choices and were able to fulfill our destiny and proceed on the evolutionary path. And we also were given with opportunities along the way to be able to help 6 other beings in that dimension that we were in. And as long as we were able to help 6 other beings in the dimension that we were in, then we were able to then receive permission to go to the next dimension. So we were equipped with not only the crude matter form, envelope that we were in, we were also equipped with free will and with partial will. And this partial will is actually like the magnetite of the earth. So magnetite is a naturally occurring element, and magnetite is something that aligns with a magnetic field. And it always knows which direction to point. And this is what is used, and that's what birds use to guide themselves through, because they have magnetite in their brains. We also have magnetite in our brains, except the magnetite in our brains have like a crystalline form, but the magnetite that we find or that comes in from pollution maybe have a completely different structure and form. So this is something that's like our GPS signal that allows us to align ourselves with the magnetic field and tells us which direction home is and go. We're like homing pigeons. The pigeon basically has been used in history as to carry messages because it knows where its nest is, it knows where its home is. So as long as that carrier pigeon was taken somewhere else, and someone needed to, before the telephone or telegraph or any other kinds of means of communication, people used carrier pigeons, and they wrapped little messages, tiny messages around the pigeon's legs and released them, and those homing pigeons went exactly back home. So people were sent on missions. They would then send messages of progress on missions back home. So this is, the homing pigeon will also know where to go. So we're just like the homing pigeons. We all want to go back home. So our outer casing could be thought of first as being stone that doesn't transmit or light or energy at all. It can only reflect light. It can only reflect. It can also, can conduct heat, can absorb some part of heat. However, when going through external forces, it is able to change. It is able to undergo physical changes and become something other than what it was. Eventually, we get to be encased in life forms. And again, depending on what we've been able to do over time. I know we covered a topic of rocks once upon a time. And eventually we got to see that rocks actually serve, that rocks actually have a mission to serve by providing us with all the chemical elements that we need in our bodies that are able to be used by our bodies to produce our skin, to produce our blood, to produce everything that we have in our body, and to be able to for the body to communicate with itself and with others through the chemical signals that it sends, okay? So eventually, over time, we were able to progress up the chain of evolution, becoming maybe a single-celled animal, a multiple-celled animal, or a plant. We became a plant, we became an animal, we became an ant, we became a spider, so on up the chain, okay? And all this time, our outer envelope became closer and closer in crude matter form to being able to take in the current energies that were present in our environment. So our bodies are specifically produced to be able to withstand certain energies, certain frequencies, and retain certain knowledge at a particular dimension. And when we've absorbed all the energies that we can in that one dimension, then we are given permission to go to the next dimension. So this happens all the time. Our plan of destiny, maybe we need to, we could be born as a sick person. We could be born as a healthy person. We could be formed as a somehow handicapped person, somehow disabled person, which every one of those physical manifestation of ours becomes part of or is part of our destiny for that lifetime to learn certain lessons and to experience certain events. We need to experience things both from the positive and the negative side. So when we have a healthy body and a beautiful body one lifetime, we may have something that's the opposite in another lifetime to be able to go through both experiences. And I'm convinced that when we have experienced everything there is to experience, then when we see someone experiencing that which we had experienced before, then we can have instant empathy for those individuals because we literally know and remember how we felt and what it felt like to be in that state. Okay, so eventually over time, we think more and more of others as opposed to ourselves, and we get closer and closer to God consciousness and God presence. Okay. And eventually we mature our outer casings, going up and up in our evolution ladder and being, of course, within the pattern of our current destiny and life experiences for that particular lifetime. So we go and come as a plant at one point, and then we go up the ladder. And again, in every dimension, we are able to given the opportunities, of course, to help other individuals, other persons in the same dimension, other beings in that dimension, and be able to get permission to go to the next dimension. So, of course, to reiterate, if you come as a plant, then we will undergo and experience the plant experiences, and depending on the kind of plant we are. If we are coming in as a cactus or came in as a cactus at one point, we will be able to thrive in a hot, dry condition. But if that cactus is put into, let's say, a bog, it will automatically die. Same thing happens with a water lily. A water lily needs to be in water. It needs to be in very rich mud strata to be able to survive. If we put that water lily in a desert, it will not be able to survive either. So again, what we are born into and as determines the environment that we're born into. Excuse me. Determines the environment that we're born into as well. And automatically, if let's say we are a cactus seed and we wind up being driven by the wind into a bog, into, let's say, a marsh, we will not be able to survive. However, a water lily that comes into that environment will be able to survive. So the fact that we get into an environment, that environment produces and gives to us all the life source that we need on a physical level, all the conditions that we need on a physical level to be able to survive in that environment. And it gives us everything that we need to be able to exist in that environment and thrive in that environment, okay? This actually is similar to us being in a certain dimension, because every dimension has energies and frequencies and knowledge that are contained in it. And those energies and frequencies and knowledge, otherwise known as the mechanism of influences, is what gives us those energies, those frequencies, that knowledge that are needed by us at that dimension to be able to evolve and to be able to grow. So at the time that, Moses was here, our environment, our dimension was the dimension of the Old Testament, of the Kabbalah. And basically at that time, our environment was the one of following the rule of the law. We were supposed to follow the letter of the law, okay? And at that time, that was our plan of destiny. Because that's where we were born into. That was our plan of destiny. That was the environment that we were born into. And therefore, that's the environment, that's the mechanism of influences that was able to give us everything that we needed, all the experiences that we needed, positive, negative, somewhere in between, that allowed us to involve us to grow, and allowed us to be able to help other individuals, at least 6, for us to be able to change dimensions. Once we went through that, then we were able to go through, let's say, the dimension of the New Testament. And again, the New Testament came in with its own particular set of rules and regulations, its own particular guidelines, its own particular ordinance and order, guidelines and way of execution, because the procedures or the practices that are done in the Old Testament are not the practices that are done in the New Testament. Dimension is different, energies are different, the methodology by which you are able to obtain those energies and frequencies also become different. So again, besides the spiritual beings that are helping us, we have the mechanism of influences helping us, we have the partial will that is driving us to fulfill our destiny on that lifetime to be able to get us to the next higher dimension. Of course, the next step would have been and is the Quran. And again, the Quran has different ordinances and order. They have a different set of guidelines, different set of procedures, different sets of operational activities that need to be done in order for those individuals who are in that dimension to absorb those energies and frequencies at that dimension. And again, spiritual beings are there, mechanism of influences are there, and our partial will is there to drive us. And then we go on from there to the knowledge book. Once we've absorbed the energies of the 18th dimension, evolution dimension, in the Quran, then we'll jump into the knowledge book. and that's where we start from the next phase. However, the thing that is very interesting to me, that even though it may look like the knowledge book is different from the Old Testament, different from the New Testament, different from the Quran, and different from the religions of the Far East, the philosophies of the Far East, at the same time, it contains all of the practices that the other ones had. Because we have, it's called prayer, it's meditation, it's the practices. So if in the Old Testament we were supposed to be following the letter of the law, we actually do that right now with the working ordinances in the knowledge book. We are given certain activities, we're given certain programs within which we grow, and those are the reading program, the writing program, the council flower study program, the totalities of 18, and their study flower program. So in each of these cases, each one of these programs has its own particular set of guidelines, its own particular way of doing things, and its own particular execution order. In other words, the first 62 weeks of a council, or a totality of 18, actually of a council, those are the training period of a solar teacher. And during that time, you write the knowledge book, you read together for 62 weeks, one fascicle at a time on a Tuesday. And of course, you learn this is our learning to cooperate and work with each other as three individuals coming from different dimensions and coming together in being at the same coordinate level, meaning working towards the same goal, and being at the love frequency for each other and tolerance frequency for each other and acceptance of each other as they are. Okay? So this is its own particular set of ordinances. Then at the end of the 62 weeks, the ordinances change in the sense, there's new things added to it, meaning first 62 weeks is writing and reading together. And then you open up a focal point on a Saturday, in which case new things come in. You need to, each one of the solar teachers at that point, then find 6 people to help and registers 30 days after registering the focal point, 3 flowers. And then now the study goes on Fridays and Saturdays and Tuesdays. Okay? So each one of these programs has its own particular set of ordinances. And in each case, we need to follow the guidelines that are being given to us. So this is both the knowledge book and still having the same concept of following the letter of the law as in the Old Testament. Now, in the New Testament, we were given love. We were given the love frequency. And the same thing is happening now. We need to be at the love frequency to be able to love and accept and tolerate each other, to be able to accept each other totally for what we are and what we are not, and be able to function and cooperate and work with each other. So it has to be all based on love, based on acceptance. So again, it's the New Testament energies and frequencies that are still present. What is actually coming prominent, and in the 18th dimension, we learned, meaning the evolution dimension of the Quran, we learn how to have social skills, social interaction, social living system. So again, this is, beginning steps of acceptance of others and altruism. So all the programs and all the religions of the previous time are actually, those energies and frequencies are present in the knowledge book and then some. And what we're working on now, based on love, based on acceptance, based on tolerance, we are now beginning to function on logic, based on logic and intellect, where guided by and being supported by the love that we have and the acceptance that we have, we are then using our logic to make decisions as to what to do. It is no longer the feeling, it is now the logical, or logic actually is connected to frequencies, and that frequency is connected to the evolution level, and those frequencies are actually connected to the mechanism of influence in the universal dimension. So step by step, we are actually going through our plan of destiny, whatever environment we were born into, and that environment allows us to absorb the energies and frequencies that we need at that particular point in time to then succeed to go to the next dimension, the next dimension, the next dimension, and slowly over time we are gradually, without being shocked, without being, burnt out like a 100-watt bulb being, bring in 1,000 watts of energy into a 100-watt bulb, what happens? The bulb disintegrates. So each time we save ourselves, we're able to maintain ourselves and safely go up the evolution ladder. And now I think it's time for a break. So we've been listening to the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek on Transformation Talk Radio. If you need to text or give us information, telephone number is 973-787-7035. Email address is mmjp99, Mary John Peter 99 @gmail.com. And of course, our website is www.usa.theknowledgebook.net. Okay, so we're stopped for a break for a bit and come back and review.
To find answers to life's questions, you need to look within yourself. Dr. Glenna Rice brings your questionable conversations on Transformation Talk Radio each month. Tune in each month for insight into how you can live up to your full potential. Dr. Glenna is a physical therapist, certified Access Consciousness, and Access Body Class facilitator. How does it get any better than this? For more information on Dr. Glenna Rice and her work, visit glennarice.com.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit sarahluce.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Do you believe you are meant to live with more joy, but you're just not sure how to get it? What does the phrase, "give me the joy," make you feel? Join me, Lynn Horde, every second and fourth Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, on the Gimme the Joy Show, as I take you on a journey to peel back the layers so you can take back your joy. To find out more about my work as the Joy Coach, including my popular programs Joy School and Joy at Work, visit lynnhorde.com.
Take your own journey with the angels with Claire Candy Huff's Heaven Sent Guided Angel Meditation CD. Letting go of concerns and living in the now. This beautiful CD walks listeners through practical exercises to help free them from the burdens, worries, and concerns of daily life.
Walking a quarter of the way across the bridge, you see a bright, emerald green light and sense a loving presence. This is Archangel Raphael's green healing energies, nourishing and revitalizing you. Take a moment now to bathe in this green healing light.
Giving you much more than just relaxation and stress release, this wonderfully narrated CD provides vivid visualization, soothing and inspiring music, and an angel's choir that will bring you peace, clarity, and a newfound awareness. Visit angelhealinghouse.com today.
And hello, we're back on the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek on Transformation Talk Radio. We've been talking about different topics over time on the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek. And of course, our website is www.usa.theknowledgebook.net. My telephone number is 973-787-7035. This is a cell phone number, so you can text whatever topics you would like covered, whatever questions you may have, or leave me a message. And my email address is mmjp99 @gmail.com, Mary John Peter @gmail.com. So today we've been covering total will, partial will, individual will, and free will in conjunction with destiny, in conjunction with karma, and how it all plays together. So again, to review, maybe, total will or will of the total is defined in the knowledge book as the will of the total of Allah, the unification of your personal consciousness code and the universal code. Now, code here means elevation. This is a height. So your height of consciousness needs to be at the same level as the universal code, and they need to unify. Now, partial will is the smallest fragment of the will of the whole that is present in the human, and this is our magnetite. This is our GPS. This is our unconscious drive, just like the salmon going upstream, our unconscious drive that pushes us forward to completing our task of going back to the origin, back home from which we started, but coming back with an outer covering, an outer shell, crude matter shell that is now at the same level as our spiritual totality that we came in with. Now, individual will, as defined by the knowledge book, is our freedom of thought. And it's despite the fact that our thoughts can reach dimensions that very advanced entities cannot reach, even though they're much more powerful than us, we have this propensity with our thoughts to go where we're not supposed to go. And apparently, through our thoughts, we've been able to somehow go into dimensions and started affecting those dimensions. And when they noticed, and the higher powers noticed, that's what we were doing unconsciously, is going into dimensions and making not changes or affecting those dimensions. That's when an evolution plan was planned out for us, was put together for us to be able to then control our thoughts and be able to discipline our thoughts through logic and through intellect. And that's how we went through our moral teaching or training education system through the religions that were given to us, through the religions of the Far East, through the Kabbalah, through the New Testament, and through the Quran. And now we are here with the knowledge book, which basically takes those individuals who are ready and made ready for those previous, through the previous religions we went through the previous training we went through, and takes us to the next evolutionary step of going from the 18th evolution dimension, which is the alpha love dimension, to the omega dimension, which is the 19th evolutionary dimension, and which is the 76th energy dimension. So the knowledge book takes us from 72 to 76, and it does it gradually through the energies and frequencies and knowledge it gives it to us. Now, of course, in conjunction with this, there's something called karma. And karma, of course, is our being able to learn the lessons that we need to learn through experiences, through what we're going through. And, through our living experience and the karma that we're going through. And we're able to then go up the evolutionary ladder gradually, safely, without being hurt in any way. And of course, destiny is our plan for our lifetimes. We come in completely prepared with everything that we need, all the resources that we need, or the connections that we need, the body that we need, everything that we need, we come in with prepared. And we come into an environment, into a family that is specifically chosen by us to be able to provide us those opportunities to grow, to evolve, to experience, and grow in love, and grow in acceptance, grow in tolerance, and grow in patience, and be able to go up the evolutionary ladder. And this in turn allows us to then be able to absorb higher and higher energies, higher and higher frequencies, and be able to know higher and higher knowledge. And that allows our crude matter form, our bodies, to be able to resonate at higher frequencies and be able to absorb more energies, and so on up the ladder, until we get to the point where our spiritual totality is equal to our physical totality, our energy level, our evolution level is equal to the initial level that our God created us and from which we came. And step by step, little by little, we go up the evolution ladder. And we are just like the salmon. We are just like the homing pigeon. We are driven by our partial will to be part of that whole, to be part of that totality, to be able to go back home from where we started. Eventually we get to the point that we unite with the whole, that we lose ourselves in the whole. We become a nothingness, and that's when we obtain our allness. We get our allness. What that means is, despite the fact that seems to be like a contradiction, because nothingness, what is a nothingness? So that means we become non-existent in our ego, become non-existent as a separate entity, as a separate something that's apart from everything else. We become unified with everything else. We become part of allness. In other words, we become part of that infinite awareness that knows and gets access to knowledge, energies, and frequencies from infinite dimensions. So this is our path, this is our journey, and we come here perfectly prepared, and we incarnate perfectly prepared to be able to leave this dimension, this world dimension where the godly evolution is being made, finish our godly evolution, and that means that our spiritual totality is equal to our crude matter form totality, our evolution totality, because we are here with that outside crude matter envelope. That was our job, to basically get to the level of the initial spark that God has created, which is the initial spark that he basically broke off himself and gave to us. Okay, so that's our journey, that's our path. And eventually, over time, we'll get there. This journey is not easy, as some of us know very well. But that means nothing worthwhile doing is ever easy, when we know from life. Look up the salmon going up waterfalls. But anyway, I think we have to stop at this point, because our time is up, and somehow the time rolls around to finish when it feels like we just about started. But anyway, please remember, if you're in your New York City area, stop by the Focal Point, which is every week on Saturday. Please do call us and let us know you're coming, so we can prepare enough food for everyone. Please do text or email questions or topics you would like covered on the next radio show. And we could cover questions maybe at one radio show or maybe over several radio shows. And then we are here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time on Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek on Transformation Talk Radio. And if you would like to schedule a conference in wherever you are, please do email us and call us. We'll be able to come out and answer any questions that you may have personally and talk more about the Knowledge Book. And as humanity's verdict is in humanity's hand, and Knowledge Book states, and Mrs. Chernak frequently reminds us, you are the ones who will save the world. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Ptaszek. Marge was led to the Knowledge Book, a gift to humanity, and its time of transition to the Golden Age that provided the truth and energies and frequencies. Now, she shares information from and answers questions about the Knowledge Book with you each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information, visit Marge at usa.theknowledgebook.net.